Hey everybody, welcome back to Football Talk with Vinny. In today's video, we're going to go over the first 2 days of free agency. So as football always is, it's kind of different from a lot of the other sports where, especially like baseball, where free agency in the NFL, the first 2-3 days is where almost all of the free agents do sign. Now there still are a couple big name free agents left, of course, because in 2 days you're not going to sign everybody, but a lot of names in that top 100 have already come off the board. So let's just get right into it with the biggest shocker of the entire 2 days. The fucking New England Patriots, man. I mean, for New England, they got guys like Aguilar and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Also, essentially got Trent Brown back for nothing. I think they gave up a 5th, and in exchange, they got Trent Brown and a 7th, so almost gave up nothing for him. Matthew Judon. And then the D lineman, probably not going to pronounce his name right, Godchu. And also the other receiver born from the 49ers. So, damn, man, if you're in New England, you're signing a whole bunch of free agents. This is completely out of character. But when you really break it down and you look at the guys they signed, I kind of really like almost all the moves if you're New England, right? Bill Belichick, I believe, is like 68, 69, right? He's not going to want to fully rebuild a team. Again, they were a 7-win team last year, and that's without a couple of the players who opted out on defense. So I really like all the moves. Obviously, we'll just start from the offensive side of the ball. Getting the top 2 tight ends in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, right? You now give Cam some weapons to actually use. And obviously with Cam, he had his best years in Carolina with, really going to the tight ends. Obviously, he had some wide receivers too, but, Greg Olsen was primarily the target there. And obviously, we've seen what New England can do when you had 2 Pro Bowl caliber tight ends, where they had just a few years back with Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. And then obviously, they did actually address the wide receiver position as well by getting Nelson Aguilar and the other receiver from the 49ers, Bjorn. Now, obviously, with those guys, they're not any special names. They're not really going to change the game. But you do have guys that have some speed and can catch some short passes and take them the distance. So it gives you a threat if you do want to stack the box for Cam and try to stop those tight ends and stop that running game. It gives you a threat deep that can at least beat single coverage, hopefully, in some matchups. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you really just got either some pass rushers in Judon or some defensive linemen to kind of beef up that front 7 to make sure teams can't run the ball on you. You already had a pretty fantastic back end of your defense, and obviously with some of the opt-out guys coming back in, again, your defense was a top 5 defense. 2 years ago, I believe it was number 1 or 2. And even this year, I believe it was top 10. I think it was 7th in points allowed. So even this year was still a good defense. So getting most of your guys back that opted out, plus a couple of these free agents you signed, I really don't see a reason how the New England Patriots can't be a top 5 defense again this year. Obviously, I think Stephon Gilmore would play a big role in that. So there's been some talks about, is he going to get traded? The whole Bill Belichick mantra is, I'd rather trade a guy a year early rather than a year late, right? So he believes that he's going to see a huge drop-off from Stephon Gilmore in the next year or so, right? Bill Belichick may look to trade him. At this point, what can you get for him? He is an aging corner at this point. He's still playing at the top notch. But again, what can you possibly get for him? Could you maybe get like a late 1st round pick or maybe a high 2nd? So I guess we'll find out. But if he stays with the New England Patriots, I can definitely see them, definitely being a playoff team for sure. And then also with those moves just from New England's side, it does beg the question of, are they going to draft a quarterback now in the 1st round? And if they do, is Cam still going to be the starter? I think Cam Newton, obviously, everyone knows he didn't really have a lot of chances at success last year in New England because the weapons were pretty much non-existent. But now you sign a couple of free agent guys, and if you're Cam, you have to feel excited that if you can come back and you can play a little better than you played last year, right? It's going to be year 2 in the system. You can show some improvements, right? And you can be a better quarterback so you can get a bigger deal, maybe a long-term deal, whether it's in New England or elsewhere, if you can play well in New England with the weapons that you have now. Also, they did get the corner Mills from Philly as well. Forgot to throw that in there. There's so many names for New England. But with that being said, they weren't the only team to sign some free agents. So I'm just going to name a few guys, a couple of key spots where they went. So I think interesting, Ryan Fitzpatrick signed a 1-year, $10 million deal with the football team. So I think that's a great move for the football team. In case Heineke, whether he is the starter or not, at least you give yourself a serviceable backup. And with that being said, with that move happening, the Dolphins actually ended up signing Jacoby Brissett on a 1-year deal. So now he's going to be the backup for Tua. The Jets, I think as well, they were pretty active in free agency. They signed Davis, the wide receiver from Tennessee, and then also Lawson, the D-end for the Cincinnati Bengals. So if you're, again, the Jets, you needed to upgrade that receiving core. I did talk about it in one of my other videos where I talked about the offseason needs. So they did that. And then also upgrading that D-line with Carl Lawson is a great move as well. A move that actually just happened a few hours ago. The Bills actually signed Emmanuel Sanders for about 1 year, $6 million. I think that's a sneaky good signing if you're Buffalo, right? You already have a pretty good team. You have a very good roster. And adding a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, he's essentially going to be the number 3 or number 2 wide receiver. Just depends on where you think Cole Beasley's ranked. As of right now, they still have not signed John Brown, so getting a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, kind of another kind of slot receiver type guy that can kind of work the middle of the field, I think is a very good signing for a guy like Josh Allen. Some other moves, the Baltimore Ravens signed Kevin Zeitler to improve that offensive line. Marshall Yonder retired before last season was played, and you really saw it play out this year. Their offensive line play was not as good. The running game was still good. Obviously, you have Lamar Jackson, but the passing game was pretty bad this year. And, you just don't have the protection also in the run game with the running backs, not necessarily when Lamar Jackson pulls it down to run, but when they're designed run plays, they didn't get as many big plays from the running backs this year. And again, that's because that interior offensive line, you got to create the holes. Bengals signed one of the Dallas Cowboys ex-corners, Chidobe Awuzie. I think it's a pretty good signing for them, right? You need some help on that defensive side, try to help out Joe Burrow and that offense. Now, the Browns also had a very huge signing, too. They signed the Rams safety, John Johnson, to 3 years, $33 million. At only $11 million, that's pretty cheap considering, I think a year ago, a lot of those top-end safeties were getting $14 million. So you actually signed him for a little under what the going rate was for a top-notch safety. So I think that's a very good move for Cleveland. Another big move, I think, is Tyrod Taylor. He actually signed with the Houston Texans. So obviously that's big for one reason. If you're signing a guy like Tyrod Taylor, it's got to be because, you obviously are coming to terms with the fact that you're going to have to trade Deshaun Watson, and you can't just trade Deshaun Watson and have no starting quarterback. So signing a guy like Tyrod Taylor probably signals the end of the relationship with Deshaun Watson. But again, I believe if they are to trade Deshaun Watson, they're going to get so much back in return that they will quickly be able to rebuild. Obviously not this year, but within a year or two, I think they will be a decent football team. The Jacksonville Jaguars obviously had the most money to spend. They did get a couple of free agents. So they actually were the ones that signed Marvin Jones, 2 years, $14 million. You kind of get Marvin Jones in there to help out Trevor Lawrence when you do draft him. He does need some guys to throw to, right? So you do need to put some talent around him, even though probably in those 2 years, Marvin Jones obviously won't really be able to be probably as productive by the time the Jags are ready to compete. But again, you still need to give that young quarterback some weapons to be successful in his early years as well. And then they did get Shaquille Griffin, the cornerback from the Seattle Seahawks. Signed him to a 3-year, $44 million deal. So I really like that move. Again, young corner, I believe he's 25, 26 years old. You pair him with C.J. Henderson, the corner you drafted in the first round, and you're starting to rebuild a young defense. Tennessee Titans signed Bud Dupree, 5 years, $85 million. And he's a fantastic player, obviously coming off a major injury. But if he can get back to playing the way he played in Pittsburgh, it's a great signing. Again, I think the Titans D-line needed some major work this offseason, so you get a huge piece in Bud Dupree. Now, Kansas City just signed Joe Thuney, the guard, actually from New England. His deal was 5 years, $80 million. That is a lot of money. Obviously, he's worth the money, right? He is an all-pro type guard. But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, spending that much on the one offensive lineman position when really you need help at all 5 positions is going to be tough. It's a tough pill to swallow, I think, because if you're Kansas City, you obviously don't have that much money. So how are you going to address the other 4 positions on your offensive line? So again, Joe Thuney is a great piece, but I think it's going to make it even tougher now to address the rest of the offensive line. The Raiders ended up signing Yannick Ngakoue, 2 years, $26 million, right? Again, we talked about in the other videos, the Raiders severely needed help on that D-line. They were one of the worst teams in terms of getting sacks over the last 3 years. I think they are by far and away the worst if you take sack totals and you combine it over the last 3 years. So I think a very much needed signing there. Also, another move in that same division, the Chargers signed Lindsley, the center for the Green Bay Packers. He actually was a Pro Bowl center. So again, if you're the Chargers, you had a couple free agents on the offensive line. So getting a guy like Lindsley is a good signing. So obviously you need to protect Justin Herbert as well. Now, not really a free agency signing because the Giants did franchise tag Leonard Williams, but they were able to come to an agreement with him on a more long-term deal at 3 years and $63 million. So again, at that point, you're paying him about $21 million. It's kind of like the going rate for a top D lineman. So, I mean, I think the way he played, if you're a Giants fan, you're just happy he's on your team for the next 3 years. Another one, there was news in today, actually, that the Bears were really trying to go get Russell Wilson. Kind of figured it wasn't going to happen based on what the Seattle Seahawks had told them. So they ended up with the consolation prize of Andy Dalton for 1 year and $10 million. Pretty sure Bears fans are going to be pretty disappointed at that, especially knowing that they tried to go after some top-end quarterbacks. Saints, obviously, kind of not really, again, free agent signing, but you did get Jameis Winston back, and you kind of restructured Taysom Hill's deal to where you gave him a bunch of money, but as soon as those contract numbers come out, which should be tomorrow, I believe Wednesday, is when, like, Over the Cap and those websites will be able to actually publish the contracts, because that's the first day of official free agency signings. But essentially, from what I understood from it, was they just gave him some extra years so they can drop the cap figure. So again, they're still pushing the can down the road. That is money they are going to have to pay him, which means their salary cap for future years are going to be kind of not in great shape. But I guess, you know, their line of thinking is they got about $22-ish million, I believe, on dead cap for Drew Brees' number for this year, and that will come off next year. So maybe they're going to try to offset some of that money. And then the Bucks, obviously, just signing the whole band back together, right? They get Gronk, right? You re-sign Shaq Barrett. You got Levante David, right? They're still trying to get Ndamukong Suh back for a 1-year deal. So you're essentially just trying to run it back. Obviously, year 2 for Brady, it actually should be better unless he severely declines, which eventually it will happen. He is going to be, I think, 44 years old. So eventually it will happen. Year 2 in a new system for any quarterback usually is where you see the biggest growth. You saw it with Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people thought that Aaron Rodgers, and that's why Green Bay had drafted a quarterback, was on the decline. But again, second year in your new system, you just know the playbook a lot better. You don't have to think as much, and you saw it with Aaron Rodgers winning the MVP. Now, as for the free agents that actually have not signed, you got guys like Trent Williams, Kenny Golladay, a lot of the receivers, Will Fuller, Juju Smith-Schuster, you know, a lot of the receivers are still yet unsigned. So that should be interesting within the next couple of days, and obviously I'll try to update you guys as well. I'm going to try to make a video every day, at least for this like first week or so of free agency, because again, that's usually where you get 5-6 names signed every single day. And again, as the offseason starts to get less and less signings, I'll maybe make a video when a big name free agent finally comes off the board. But that's going to be it for the video. I know it's a pretty long video, but obviously it's the first 2 days of free agency all in one video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you did like it, make sure to hit the like button. It does help the channel out. And also hit the subscribe button if you do enjoy this content and you want to see more videos. But again, that's the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching.